Hi, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm, and today I want to take you through soil testing, my recommendations, whether you should or shouldn't pot for soil testing. But first I need to give you a quick visual detour that I think you'll find interesting and relevant. This first clip comes from boxwoods growing in my front yard. Now, keeping in mind the season, I want gardeners amongst you to sort of visually ID why is that top growth, the first 2 inches on the tops of the growth, turning yellow. And of course, this is cultivar specific. This is happening in the autumn, but it's putting on new growth at this time of year because it's cooled down, because there's lots of soil moisture. This is classic for this boxwood, so there's nothing wrong here. This is just another version of nature's first green is gold, and there you go. I want to show you this other one, different part of the garden. Have a look at these peonies, and again, gardeners who have a keen eye towards this will look at this and say, well, that's very natural for a peony. It's just turning yellow because it's the end of the season for this plant and it's starting to take the nutrients back, store them back down into the tissues. This is natural. This is senescence. I want to show you another picture I often use in one of my presentations for local garden clubs. You're going to see these leaves here and wonder, well, why is it turning yellow? Now, this is a very specific kind of yellow, and if you got a real close-up on this, you would notice some stippling and some bronzing, and people with a good eye towards pests would say, is that maybe not spider mites? And in fact, if you got a closer look on the back of the leaves and saw the webbing, you would notice that this is spider mite damage, not a nutrient deficiency. Fourth picture I want to show you here, very different pattern of yellowing. It's on the lower leaves on the rose, and this one looks like dryness to me. It looks like a drought response. It gives up some of its lower and inner leaves just because it can't supply moisture to the entire shrub. So here we have 4 different reasons why the plants are turning yellow or the new leaves are turning yellow, and none of them had anything to do really with nutrients. So this is my point why I go back to soil testing is if you are the kind of person that saw any one of these symptoms and said immediately, that's iron, that's magnesium, I need to immediately get some supplementation into the garden and cure that nutrient deficiency, you are exactly the kind of person who should not skimp on a soil test. Now, the reason I started this video with that little visual excursion was because I wanted to give a soft counterpoint to the main premise I'm going to give you here now, which is that I don't think that most gardeners necessarily should get a soil test or manage their garden with the testing results. Now, the exceptions to that, first one I gave you right off the cuff, is that if you're considering doing something unwise, adding a ton of magnesium, adding a ton of iron, adding a ton of phosphorus, which is often over-fertilized within gardens, or making a large-scale pH adjustment, then yes, go ahead and get yourself a test. It may save you from making a mistake in your garden or confirm that that's what you needed, right? So that's number 1 exception. Number 2 exception I'm going to give you is that if your state extension service or if your local county or local municipality offers this test to you for cheap or for free, I don't see why you wouldn't. Go ahead and get it. And a little more information may be instructive to you, or it may not be, and I'm going to give you some caveats about why soil testing doesn't give you all the answers that you need. So importantly, soil testing will not tell you about soil compaction or aeration, the kind of looseness that your soil is that allows the roots to develop quickly. It's not going to tell you about drainage, whether your soil is draining too quickly or holding too much moisture. It certainly is not going to tell you why the nutrients that are showing up in the report are often not available to the plants, which can have a lot to do with that moisture or also to do with biological activity or temperature. Iron is often not available because of temperature and wet soil rather than any lack of iron in the soil at all. One other issue that you may find standard soil tests to be silent on is the issue of nitrogen. Nitrogen and ammonia testing is something that they don't generally include in standard soil tests because it moves too quickly. During the season, it'll move up and down with temperature, soil moisture, microbial activity. Oftentimes, if they're going to test it at all, they recommend, let's do it in the dead of winter when your soil temperatures are way down, we can just test residual nitrate. But it's not something they talk about in the middle of the season because it's too fast moving. And that fast moving transient nature is important to gardeners because it is the nutrient that is most likely to be short of supply in your soil and the one that gardeners work with the most. Let's talk now, pivot over to the discussion of manure and compost, because I want to throw up some composition numbers on the screen here. And what you'll see is that for a standard manure, I'm just using some general numbers here, that nitrogen is relatively high in supply. That's because the animals are eating plants that have nitrogen nitrogen in them, and so that's what they're putting out. So nitrogen is relatively high. You'll see that phosphorus is relatively low because, again, your plants don't need that much phosphorus. They don't absorb that much phosphorus. And potassium is relatively high again compared to phosphorus because your plants do absorb it. So basically what's coming out in the manure is a sort of a wide spectrum snapshot of what plants are already absorbing from soil, which makes it excellent for replenishing what has been taken out of your soil or buffing it up when you want higher yields. So it seems to me that you could use this as a cheat sheet of sorts, looking at what is in manure and compost as a general guide or a rule of what your plants would need in the garden. Something that is higher in nitrogen, lower in phosphorus, pretty good in potassium, and then has a whole bunch of micronutrients in very, very small amounts, just as the plants were taken out of the garden to make that manure and compost. And if you wanted to use that as something that could replace all the testing and tracking of nutrients in your garden, I think you've made a pretty good bet there. While at the same time, if you're actually doing it with that organic matter, incorporating let's say generous amounts of manure or compost in the garden, you're also improving the soil structure, improving the drainage, improving the organic activity or the microbial activity. So all of that is to the good, and again, didn't require a soil test of any sort to get that recommendation. And what if you wanted to supplement with conventional fertilizers or chemical fertilizers instead of organic amendments, either for cost's sake or because you just didn't have a ready supply of bulk organic amendments? Well, you can do that as well, just following the same guidelines, the same cheat sheet of what is needed in what ratio, because your plant's roots can't tell the difference. They don't know the difference between an organic fertilizer and a chemical fertilizer, so you can just use the same ratios, just dial it down and apply that way, knowing of course that the chemical fertilizers or conventional fertilizers won't give you those same soil conditioning benefits or organic matter benefits over time as the organic bulk amendments. So should you get yourself a soil test? It depends on your circumstances a little bit. Sure thing, if it's cheap or freely available to you, I don't see the harm. That's one thing. Second of all, if you're kind of a numbers wonk and you enjoy the process of tracking things on a spreadsheet year after year as you make amendments, that's fine too. Third thing I will say is if you are in a situation where you're pretty convinced that you have something wrong with your soil, you're having consistently poor results with your plants, you're seeing a symptom over and over again, and you're thinking of doing something that could be quite rash, like doing a large amendment of iron, magnesium, phosphorus, or a large pH adjustment, then definitely go ahead and pop for a soil test, if for nothing else to confirm or to debunk your suspicions about what you need to do to your soil. But for most gardeners, I have to say, it isn't necessary and can be quite limited in its usefulness in your garden. There's lots of things it can't say about the conditions in your garden, and most things come down to the same conclusion anyway. If you want a little more growth, you supplement with the things that your plants use, and you nurture the condition of the soil so it can deliver that to your plants efficiently. If you handle that, in most cases, the soil test isn't necessary. All right, if you have any questions or comments, please drop those down into the comments below the video, and I'll see what I can do to help.